We are so excited to have everybody here. This is going to be great. We are beyond elated that you guys have come to our first ever town hall meeting. I'm Mo, and I'm here with my absolute star of a co-host, Val. I have a history in podcast recording and marketing, so I'm kind of going to be the MC today of our little event. But Val right here, Val is the absolute star. Val is an expert when it comes to solar water pumps. So she's going to be kind of running this show. She's going to be answering a lot of the questions. Keep them coming. We've already got a bunch of questions coming in the chat. One more time, guys, if you want to hit us with a question in the chat, go ahead and on your phone in the bottom right, there's going to be a little ellipses. You'll hit that, go to more, and then you have the actual chat option there. You can send us any questions and we'll try to get to them at the end of the event. If you're on a PC, right down at the bottom, there's a little chat icon, and you can click that chat icon and get going. So we're going to give it a couple more minutes for some other people to come in, but this is great. Andy, Bob, JV, Matt, Randall, Sabas, Vincent, George, you guys welcome. Thanks for being here. And yeah, I think, the cool thing is that we're both extremely passionate about solar water and what it can do for the livestock community, especially in a time right now where, America's arguably one of America's most important industries is getting hit by heat waves and the rising cost of gas and, all of these different hurdles that the livestock community has to overcome. And solar happens to be one of those things that we feel pretty confident can combat all of those things. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think we're going to get started here. We've got a great crowd. People will continue to trickle in. You may get notifications that that people are coming in. Don't worry about it. This will also all be recorded and on our YouTube channel. At the end, I'll drop a link to our YouTube channel and our Facebook so you guys can get going over there and follow us. Our YouTube is an incredible resource. It really is. The YouTube has a bunch of different videos, a lot of DIY install tips, a lot of troubleshooting tips, really, really great full install series. Awesome resource. If you guys are interested in more of that stuff, go ahead and check out the YouTube. You'll also be able to find this entire town hall recorded here. Val, what do you say? You want to get started?
Let's go.
Okay, Val, why don't you give us a couple minutes and explain to the people who you are and what your experience level is.
So I've been working with NRCS for close to 3 years now. Every single day I've been consulting with someone on the phone, multiple people on the phone about livestock, irrigation, homestead, solar system, water systems. And I've seen how it can really change somebody's life when they're not having to drive out to their property and we're hauling water. But yeah, I mean, I've been working with government programs, NRCS, rotational grazing, pasture management, you name it, I've done it. So if you're looking for a combo system, you're thinking something's a little bit more complicated, you can reach out to us and we'll definitely be able to work through any engineering documents you have. That's what we're here for. I
think that's one of my favorite parts about what we do here and the YouTube channel and all of that is that there's an option for everything. And there's so many different ways to install and set up your water tanks and your panels, and it really is it has the ability to grow as you need it to grow, which is something that I love. There's so many different options. Yeah. It's kind of like building with Lego. You get to sort of build whatever you need to fit your specific use case, which is exciting.
Yeah, and we'll go over how you can build out the system to fit your needs over time. A lot of people start smaller and then they go bigger as their herd increases, as their needs increase, as they add ponds to their property. And that's what we're here for, right? right? Is to figure out, do you need a secondary pump or do you just need a couple more panels? Do you need some batteries? Those are the options that we know how, right? That's our arsenal, and we can help you choose which bullet to use basically to solve the problem.
Absolutely. Just a side note, we are located on a dusty agricultural lot in Northern California. So you may hear some trains go by. We've got tons and tons of vegetable trucks that'll drive by behind us. So if you hear a little bit of a rumble or sometimes a train horn, we'll pause for a second and let them pass. But this is live, and we are here on our agricultural lot. So there will be some fun stuff that happens. All right, Valerie, we ready to jump into the presentation?
Let's get started. Cool. So this is just a review of how to ask questions. You can tap those three little dots at the bottom of your screen. There's Mo's email as well. If you prefer to send him an email, maybe a little longer form than what you would be comfortable writing in the chat, we can get to those at the end of the webinar. We can reply to you personally. We're going to get as much personal attention to you guys as possible for being here today. So thanks. Yeah, this is us. We've gone over this a little bit, but Valerie RPS, Mo RPS, and we're just working together to try and bring you guys a little bit more personalized information, hands-on information. You know, you can find a lot of this info out there, but it's hard to gather it all into one place and make sense of it.
And I think another cool thing about RPS, at least what I fell in love with, is that at our very core, at our heart, we really want to make a connection with you guys. We love to have those interpersonal relationships with our clients, and we really care about you guys. So that's another reason why we decided to put on this type of town hall, is that, you know, it's fun to get to interact. It's nice that you guys get to see kind of the face of the company, and we get to field your questions right here in live time. So yeah, that's another big reason why we wanted to do kind of this sort of presentation.
Cool. So you saw what we're going to cover today, right? How solar pumping works, some diagrams. We're going to go over livestock specific situations. What I've seen in Texas also, right? I've worked with a lot of Texas clients, and I've seen the whole landscape of what they're struggling with, what maybe specifically they need, what, you know, those guys are using. Even windmills, we have a little special windmill technology that we're going to share with you, maybe a brief sneak peek. And then finally, some NRCS information, right? How to get a practically free solar pump from some government funding. Okay, cool. So let's start with what a solar pump is, what a solar pump system is. It's three basic components: solar panels, charge controller, and solar well pump, right? It could be a surface pump as well, right? Submersible and surface pumps can both be solar driven. You might have seen that there are some systems out there on the internet without a controller. We use a controller specifically because it makes the whole system more efficient. You're using an MPPT, which is maximum power point tracking, right? So you're trying to get the most amount of voltage out of what the panels are producing down into the pump. There are two different types of systems out there, from DC to DC, which is DC power coming in through the solar panels down through the controller to a DC pump. And then there's like a DC to AC, which is running like a three-phase motor, 220 motor. Those are for our larger systems, you know, deeper wells, higher volume. And for that, we're using an inverter that's just chopping up some of the DC power into three-phase AC 220, right? So both of those are what we consider solar pump systems.
It's nice to kind of hear you explain it that way, because I know that personally, when I first broke into the industry, I think my fear was that there was the barrier to entry was all this educational stuff that I'd have to take on. And I think that the magic that we have here at RPS is that we break it down in a way that's actually really easy to understand. And so it's really refreshing to hear you kind of explain that in that way, because it's so easy to grasp once you understand those really simple three components.
Yeah, and what you're looking at, right, is it's just a typical system. You're looking for a system that has the capability of a low water sensor, so that your pump doesn't run dry, right? Shuts off the pump, that's the controller. A tank full sensor, so it shuts off the pump if your tank is full and you don't overflow it and create a lake accidentally. You're looking for a slow start, slow stop, which is soft on the mechanics of the pump, right? You don't need a torque arrestor. There's not that violent startup that you sometimes see in older pumps that are 20 years old, that it makes it rattle around in the well. That's also the controller. So we're using, right, brushless motors, so that you're not running down on, there's sometimes this nib that's on a motor that rubs down, and then after that nib, that connection, that electrical connection of the motor is done, you got to throw the whole pump out. We don't use those, right? We don't use diaphragm pumps, we don't use brushed motors. You're really going for some quality parts that allow you to control when you're pumping water, where you're pumping water, and how efficiently you're pumping water, right? Monocrystalline panels versus polycrystalline, we prefer the monocrystalline just for efficiency. Yeah, really, really beautiful stuff. And again, I can't stress enough the high quality of these pumps. They're absolutely incredible. And I think that there's been so many hours of love and care that have gone into delivering a product that is just absolutely that you could stand behind forever. Right, and part of that is giving you options, right? So there's a motor in a submersible pump. There's a motor, and then there's a pumping mechanism. That motor is that DC brushless or the AC brushless motor. And then you have the pumping mech, which is either helical or centrifugal, right? So this is how do you move the water from the bottom of the well up to the top of, let's say you're pumping into a tank. The first is going to be helical, which is a worm gear. It's positively displacing water, right? It's just cranking and moving that water inch by inch up through the pipe to the top of the well. And this is also a really nice feature for those guys who say, hey, if I want my pump to be field replaceable, the helical rotor is the one that you can use. Centrifugal as compared to a helical rotor, right? You got this rubber stator and then the stainless steel rotor of the helical rotor. The centrifugal uses stainless steel impellers. So those impellers are accelerating water up through the cavity, up through the pipe. And that's how you get those higher volume, deeper well pumps, because you can just keep stacking the impellers onto one another. And the more impellers that you use, the greater power that you're going to be able to accelerate up. The helical rotor mech pumps are really good for basically up to 300 or 400 feet of head, I would say. Lower flow applications, like probably maxing out around 10 gallons per minute. But that's what the majority, I would say, of our livestock users are utilizing out in the field is a helical rotor pump, because you don't need, right? Those are our DC pumps. You don't need too many panels. It's 2, 4, 8 panels. You're getting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 plus gallons per day. That's more than sufficient typically for most herd sizes, I would say. Yeah. However, you know, the centrifugal is good for sandier sedimentary wells because it's not going to wear down those impellers. And we'll talk about that more later for Texas, especially. Sometimes that's the right choice to make. Yeah, so this is a cross section of our pumps, actually, our helical rotor pumps. So you can see inside, when I talked about the field replaceable potential of a helical rotor, it just means that you can pop out your old one, put in the new one, right? Sometimes you see a little bit of decrease in flow and you go, it might be time to replace the helical rotor. But to be honest, most people don't have to do it ever in the lifetime of their pump. It's just a possibility of, we give you an extra one and you can have it sitting around just waiting if you need it. We're using what's called permanent magnet motors, right? These are the rare earth magnets that you might see that stick together. They're sort of black and shiny. It's the same thing. The permanent magnet motors replace the brushed motor of the past. They don't wear out. They last a really long time. And they create that electrical field for your motor to operate the machinery. You're getting copper windings. We're not taking any shortcuts there. and everything else is 304 stainless steel, which is really high quality stainless steel. Some people, we say, don't put this in ocean water, but have I had people use our pumps to operate in like a marina in Florida, the Florida Keys. I have one guy using a 5 horsepower with the same stainless steel. They haven't called us back for years. Like, they're happy. He knows it's not going to last as long. You put it in salt water and it's going to start pocking, but it's not going to just degrade immediately. You have a really, really long shelf life and lifetime in the field with 304 stainless steel in very adverse conditions. Yeah,
totally. And I think that one of the cool things is that our support team is so robust. That if something does come up, if there is an issue that needs to be fixed, oftentimes right there while you're out in the field with your pump, our support team is available all the time. Text, phone call. I mean, they're great. I think one of the things that we're really, really proud of as a team is our support team. They're just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, they're working through things like, iron bacteria, turbidity. They're working through things like sulfur. Somebody dropped their pump down a well. They don't know, and maybe somebody just sort of wired it a little bit incorrectly, the pump wire, they swapped wires. It's just basic stuff like that. I mean, very complicated. We're working with water chemistry down to just swap a wire and you're good to go. And we're here if you need us, like the entire lifetime of the system. So that's what sells most people, because it's that old style of business.
And the other cool thing is that we have worked as a marketing team here really, really hard to build a huge library of videos on our YouTube, so that our support team doesn't just have to tell you how to do it over a phone or over Zoom, but they can actually send you a video. Most often, in most cases, they can just send you a video that will show you exactly how to do what they're telling you to do, how to fix what you need to fix. It's really cool.
Well, yeah, so one example would be solar panel tilting. This is in our manual, right? You can look through the manual and see, okay, if I'm located in Odessa, Texas, right, which is sort of that leftmost part of Texas at the 90-degree angle, sort of that's where it meets. It's 32 degrees latitude. So you're probably going to be at a fixed angle tilt position of about, like 29 degrees, right? Just sort of eyeballing it. But that's what people are calling in about. Well, what do I do with my solar panels if I'm at this latitude? And we'll let you know, right? We have a couple of options that are in-house. Where do you put the solar panels? How do you tilt them? One is our scalable ground mount that you see on the left side of the screen. So that's just fixed angle, but it holds a lot of panels. So if you go for a bigger system, if you need 2,300 watt panels, which is a huge amount of square footage, then you go for the larger ground mount. If you only have a couple of 100 watt panels, there's the tiltable pole mount. What that does is allow you to adjust by season, right? Spring, summer, fall, winter, you could do 4 times a year, or most guys just do like a summer angle and a winter angle, and that's good enough. A lot of people always ask us, how far away can I put the panels from the well? Hundreds of feet. I mean, we're talking about, you can use 12 gauge wire to go up to like 250, 300 feet away from the pump to the panels. And then you just go up in wire gauge size. Right? But we'll talk to you about voltage drop. We'll do a voltage drop calculation for you just to make sure, especially depending on how powerful the pump is, how many panels there are.
Well, and actually that's another cool thing about what we have going on here, is that when you decide to order your pump and get going, you're not sent like an Amazon link to a product. You're actually we have a pump specialist who walks through the entire process with you to make sure that you get the right thing first time. And we also have our water guarantee, which means that you're going to get water through that pump, guaranteed, or money back.
Yeah, so I've talked with people about the fact that they don't think, like, I really want a solar pump, but my spring is in the middle of a gully, right? They've got this really sheer steep cliff on one side and a steep cliff on the other, and it's this big hill that they've got to get. They're like, I gotta put the solar panels on top of that hill, but I don't think it's possible. Totally possible. You leave the solar pump in the gully. We'll tell you how far to put the solar panels, what wire gauge to use, and where, you got to put it south facing, you got to put it in full sun, do a little bit of cleanup with trees around the area. But it is totally possible, even in those like sort of weird one-off situations where you're pumping water, maybe not from a well, but from, a natural resource.
Totally.
Yeah. And the one thing that some customers, we actually got a written in question from one of the attendees today about hail, right? What do I do about, because Texas, right? Texas has pretty big hail sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We typically say, this is tough, right? Hail is this unpredictable natural event where it's not really covered under warranty to replace them, but I say go for smaller panels rather than larger panels.
Like the 100-watt panels.
The 100-watt panels, because if one panel breaks, you're going to be able to replace it for about $100 rather than one big panel that breaks that you'll have to replace for $300 or $400. And that's sort of a pain. Most guys, if they know it's going to hail, they'll go out to their solar panels trying to cover them up before anything happens to them. But I would say, like a golf ball, like a one inch size piece of hail falling at 50 miles per hour is protected. Solar panels these days are very hardy against incursions of that sort. But otherwise, it's a bit of a toss-up. We haven't had many people though in Texas break panels due to hail. I get maybe 1 or 2 calls a year, maybe. Otherwise, we're talking 81 mile per hour winds. You're good with these panel mounts. We're talking 1 inch thick ice. You're protected from that, and 20 pounds per square foot of snow, right? So for the vast majority of Texans out there, that is like way too much cold weather that you have to worry about. But
absolutely,
you're good to go. Build a windbreak if you're really worried about high wind.
Coming back to these solar panel mounts, though, one of the things that I love, me and Val actually had the pleasure of going out together to install one of our Pro Series systems, and we got hands-on experience building these scalable ground mounts, the really big ones, and I'll tell you, they're pretty intuitive. That's the thing that I was most surprised about, was that it wasn't hard to figure out how to do everything.
Yeah, 2 people figured out how to do it first time out in like
in the conditions.
Hours.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't like we didn't have like a warehouse that we were building these things. We were actually out there by the river.
Well, we just left the customers do it and we filmed it. I mean, but with some guidance on our part, but otherwise they were able to figure out within a couple of hours, and they were up and running the same day, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Super cool.
Okay, so that brings us to our first secret. We told you guys that there were going to be a couple of secrets that we sprinkled throughout the presentation today, which is that solar panel tilt angle by season can affect production by up to 25%. So if you have the right solar panel tilt angle, you're going to be more efficient. You're going to be able to capture more sunlight. It's just hitting at the right angle. And so you're going to produce more voltage, which in turn runs the pump a little bit faster. You'll see, since they're variable frequency drives, right? That's what the pump is called, the pump operation, which means that it'll vary its speed depending on how much power is input, which is great because you'll be able to run in the early morning and late afternoon and early evening under low light conditions, and then full speed during the afternoon. So I've actually made a little video here of our solar panel tilt angle sizing calculator, just so you can see how it works, right?
Which is such a cool tool that we have right there on the website. You have the ability to figure out, you don't have to like look at the map and try and figure out where you are. This calculator shows you exactly what you need. So let's show them.
This is more than enough. This is almost too much information for some people. They just say, great, like this is all I need. So if we're thinking, okay, cool, we're down in South Texas, that's the latitude of 29 degrees. We bump up to past, here's Odessa. Great, we're at 32. We are running a fixed angle, a tilt angle of 27 degrees for the full year, right? So it's gonna look like this. It's not quite flat, it's not quite straight, it's a little bit off of the line. During spring and fall, right, your tilt angle is going to be 29 degrees, so a little bit higher. Winter is 52 degrees. So you can see that there is quite a big jump between our spring fall angle and our winter angle versus summer, right? To be like super, super efficient. But guess what? The fixed angle is more than sufficient for the vast majority of people out there. Some people just really like to play with their efficiency of panels. If you are one of those people, you can get a tiltable pole mount, but it's not required. Just make sure that you get the fixed angle right the first time and you're good to go. Yep.
Yeah, that's a really cool system, whether you need to get the specific angle for each part, or you can just have the fixed angle. I love that option of having the fixed angle.
Yeah, the fixed angle is easy. All right, cool. So let's move on to some diagrams, right? This is a really basic well to stock tank diagram. You could do well to pond, well to stock tank, well to storage tank. What's included in this diagram is the fact that we're using that low well sensor. So you'll see it right above in C, right above that water line. Since it's above the water line, it means the pump would be off at this point, right? The controller would sense that. It's just based on a little bit of conductivity, right? That's what it's measuring. Is it underwater? It's a different conductivity than it's out of water. It's using the flexible poly pipe, which we would use in the turnkey. It just means that it's easy install. You unroll one single strand of 100 feet of poly pipe, or 200 feet, or 300 feet, and you just throw the entire thing down the well with your pump wire and your safety rope. So it's a very quick turnaround in terms of installation for these types of systems. You don't even need a check valve, especially if it's not in a freezing location, right? The helical pump will just drain the entire line if you're using helical, and then you're good to go. You don't have to worry about pitless adapters or like drilling into the side of your casing.
Yeah, I think that the other cool thing about the flexible poly pipe is that it's easy. If there's anything that needs to happen, you can just pull it out instead of having to get specialized equipment and rent somebody to come out who can pull up your metal piping and get the whole system out. Really easy to do it on your own. It's fairly lightweight, and I think it's the best way to go.
Yeah, we have to hire someone to come over to our well that we have on the property over here, because we have old stainless steel pipe installed. There's about 200 feet of it in the well, and we're going to replace it with poly pipe with one of our solar pumps. So currently, the currently installed pump that's in there is running off of a water secure, right? One of our solar generators. But we want to replace it with just a straight solar pump that we can run during the day, one of ours. So like even RPS struggles with
the metal piping.
Stainless steel piping.
The stainless steel piping is more often than not a huge headache and nightmare.
Yeah. Okay, so let me show you, this is like a two-parter. First is Doug. This is one of my favorite customers. Doug is in Colorado, actually, but he does installs all around his ranching property. He doesn't ranch anymore. He just does installs for other people now who do ranch. And this is the epitome of an RPS 200, 2 panels straight into a stock tank, really easy. And you can see how happy he is. And that brings us to our second secret of our presentation, which is DIY install. It makes it easy. You don't need a boom truck. You don't need a well company. You don't need those distribution costs of 3 guys who are selling it to each other and then finally to you. We are selling directly to the customer, the consumer. We're saving you some costs, and we're also making it easier for you to just install it yourself and just do it in a weekend. Yeah,
I think that was the one of the most amazing things about RPS that I learned when I joined the team is that there's no middleman. A lot of times you're upsold on having to get a company out there to install it for you, And there's all sorts of hidden fees. With our PS, we don't play those games. We don't, and we don't play those games because the goal is that we want our clients and customers to be clients and customers for the lifetime of their well. One of the things that we're kind of throwing around is like we'll be there for your grandchildren when they run this well. We'll be there for your grandchildren's children when they take over and run the well. So that's the heart behind everything that we do. And so we want you guys to be able to get in there. We want you guys to be able to install it without having to do the headache of having a bunch of people come over. I cannot tell you how many countless times customers have just had their phone with our install video and then following it step by step as they install into their own wells. It's so simple. And to test that theory again, me and Val went out there and did it. So it's a really big saving grace to be able to do DIY installs, which I'm in love with that part of the company.
And that's why we go out to the field, right? We want to every single year we go through a re-engineering process. Is it working for the customers now, right, in this period of time, in 2022? And we want to double check that through our manuals and through the parts that we send out to them.
And a big reason why we do that also is that we don't cut any corners. It's not about having the best margin for us. It's about having the best product for you guys. So again, like Val said, every year we re-engineer the process and try and figure out how we can make things better on your end, which is, I love that attention to detail.
Yeah. So we'll jump back into what I consider to be the best example of a solar pump setup, right? I think you should always have backup water storage on the property. It shouldn't just be, if you have 20 cattle, you have a stock tank that's just big enough to hold enough water for just that day. I always say add a storage tank. You pump into the storage tank first, and then that storage tank gravity feeds into a stock tank or into multiple stock tanks, so that you always have maybe 2 or 3 days of water on hand, just in case if the sun isn't shining, if it's a really cloudy day, it's rainy, something happens, somebody shoots your panels. I don't know, it's happened. I've heard
totally,
absolutely
it has.
People are up a creek and they're like, whoa, I'm really glad that you recommended that I have this big storage tank in place because it saved me, right? You create a pond, some sort of backup. That's why we size you for the correct amount of water, right? We're not trying to oversize you for the pump. We're trying to slightly oversize you for what you already have in terms of storage, so that the pump can operate all throughout the day, all 6 hours, 8 hours that it has available. And then you're actually taking advantage of the sunlight while it's out. And that's also why I don't recommend, and batteries are a whole different beast. We're not going to go into batteries too much today because that's just such a deep topic of payoffs and choice, but that's why I don't recommend batteries. I always recommend a storage tank over going for batteries, because you're gonna be able to pump throughout the day and pack away water. It's just You're prepping, essentially. You're prepping for the worst and you might have the best outcome. These are all using mechanical float valves, so that's an automatic turn off. You don't have to stand out there and just turn off the pump once it's done. The mechanical float will close, it lifts up, it closes the gate, and then water stops flowing. The controller, paired with a reverse action pressure switch, which is the sensor in this case, will then register that the mechanical float has closed, the pressure will spike, and it will shut off the pump. You do need a check valve for this situation where you're doing multiple tanks, but I mean, it takes all of the thinking out of the entire process. You don't have to be out there, hands off.
The other cool thing is that's why we have such a in-depth and detailed sizing process with our pump specialists, so that you have the right system for you. They'll answer all these questions. Do I need a stock tank? Do I need batteries? All of that, because every single use case is individual. So that's another thing that I really love is that you don't actually have to think about any of these answers on your own. You've got a trained specialist who's with you the entire time. And oftentimes when you have a really interesting or unique scenario, we'll have 2 or 3 different people on this, maybe even an engineer, who are trying to find a very unique answer, because every herd is unique. Every livestock rancher is unique, you know. There's no one package fits all for these types of situations. So we just take all the guessing out of it.
Well, it's just like going to the doctor, right? You get
Totally.
diagnosed,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
you want a second opinion.
Yeah.
And we're not offended by the fact that you might want a second opinion from someone else
Not
in the
at
company.
all. Not at all. Yeah.
We relish that opportunity because we send you to somebody else. They give you a little bit of a different opinion, maybe some extra details, but typically we do agree. I would say between
Like in 90%.
I would say more than 90% of the time we agree, but just with a little bit of a fresh view on things, because we've each had different experiences helping customers and maybe seeing something that works right for them in this particular instance, which brings us to some customer photos. You can see what they've done here, right on the bottom right hand corner. Very typical installation of a stock tank, but if you look at the left hand side, that's actually part of the same installation, that big storage tank on top of an elevated surface. So clearly they have very flat ground. They don't have much else in terms of gravity going on, and they wanted just a little bit of extra gravity pressure. So maybe that stock tank is further away across flat ground instead of right next to the storage tank, right? That's the typical gravity feed backup water setup. And they said, okay, we're gonna lift it, I don't know, it looks like 10 feet in the air. We're gonna put some 2x4s up, and we're gonna use the RPS 200, which is that 2-panel system, about 3 to 5 gallons per minute. And we're gonna fill up the stock tank, or we're gonna fill up the storage tank and then fill up the stock tank via, if you can see, it looks like a valve, right? They'll open up the valve when they need to. It just looks like a typical garden hose valve, and then they shut it off. So these people, for right now, for their installation, they're doing it manually, but they can also just use a mechanical float in the future. Yeah.
You know, real quick, it is already 10 o'clock, and I do see that people are leaving. So we're going to keep going, but I just wanted to pause because we have a really special announcement to make. If you're here, if you are in this town hall, we've got a very special discount to give you if you want to purchase one of these systems. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put down in the chats for everybody. That link is to our sizing form. It has some questions about what system is right for you. And then what you're going to get right here, Town Hall 50. That is the code that you're going to use, and we're going to give you $50 off any system that you guys want. Just mention Town Hall 50, put it in there, and you guys are going to get $50 off, just because we wanted to say thanks, and we want to respect your time. We're going to continue on the presentation. We've got a little bit to go. Please hang out. I'll announce this again at the end, and then when we get to questions. But I just want to make sure that you guys saw this code before you leave, if you guys have to get out of here around 10 o'clock. So guys, thank you so much. Town Hall 50, $50 off any system for you.
We'll do a little speed run through the next couple diagrams and a little bit of solar sizing, but essentially what I wanted to mention, like I said earlier, you can increase water production by adding a couple more solar panels, add it in parallel or series, but parallel increases your current rate, which will bump up your ability to operate under lower light conditions, so early morning, later afternoon. And then we also always have the ability to decrease the water flow into your tank if your well is a little slow, by dialing that down. So that's just another controller feature, right?
Absolutely.
And here's another one of my favorite clients, who is John. He's from West Texas. He has about 100 head, and he wanted 100 gallons per minute. And he got it with a 5 horsepower. He's creating a big old pond out there where it's clearly very dry, and he's got elk and livestock in the area. He was thrilled.
I got to tell you my favorite part about John's story right here. Take a look at him celebrating. Look at that face.
Yeah.
He is so excited.
He called me multiple times.
Yeah.
He was like, well, this is the best thing ever. Yeah.
Absolutely.
He didn't think it was gonna work. He drove all the way out there. It was a couple hours. He waited, for the shipping. It was a couple days, but he was a little suspect of whether a 5 horsepower solar pump could compete with what he was typically using, which was like 10 horsepower models. And it did.
And the cool thing is that we see this a lot. A lot of times people have really big questions and even doubts about solar and how it can keep up. And then you just cut to John and that big smile. And the cool thing is a lot of people don't get to see this, but in the marketing department, we have an entire file of pictures of all of our clients celebrating just like this. So we have a bunch of stories of people who have overcome incredible odds to get the system that they want and to get it going, and pumping for virtually $0 a year, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So there's a livestock water application. What I'll say here is this is good for cold climates. This is a battery application. It's like the typical Ritchie water, right? It's pressure induced. A cow pushes its face into the water, gets some water, and a pressure tank is going to be the thing that expels that water. A solar pump is totally compatible with a pressure tank, and you need a pressure tank for one of these applications. But this is, some people use it, some people don't. Call us. It's a little bit more advanced installation. This is a good customer photo of what we've got out there. They're using an RPS 400. So
love this system.
Not too many panels, and you're still using a pressure tank, which you would think it typically does need quite a bit of head on a pump.
Well, but the truth is that solar can do a lot more heavy lifting than people give it credit for. And I think that's one of the really cool things.
Yeah, so I would say we're going to move on to just a quick overview of solar pump sizing, which is you don't need to size the solar pump to the bottom of the well. We just need your static water level, which is from the top of the well down to the top of the water, right? Sometimes you have a 200-foot well and you have a 50-foot static water level.
Totally, yeah.
That static water level could fluctuate seasonally based on drought, based on just your aquifer. Maybe you have a next door neighbor who's pulling a ton of water. You've got to be really cognizant of what could be happening in your well in your area. And that's what we'll ask during sizing, right? Do we need to oversize your pump slightly? Because even though the static water level is 50 feet now, it could be 150 feet in 3 years. People are drilling deeper holes these days just to be able to access the water that previously was very close to the surface.
Well, and droughts, right? The droughts have been hitting really hard. And so it's just another way to tackle those sorts of obstacles.
Yeah. So this is how we would calculate total dynamic head of a pump, right? Total head it's just how much is the pump pushing against to be able to get to the water to its intended destination, to the top of the storage tank, to the top of the hill, into a pressure tank. We take the static water level, we take that drawdown that's possible, right? The drawdown is maybe you start out at 50 feet of a static water level, and then seasonally it draws down another 20 feet, let's say. So we're at 70 feet. Your additional lift is the elevation change, the vertical lift from the top of the well to the top of whatever location you're pumping into. So let's say a storage tank, and the storage tank is up a hill that is 50 feet high, and the storage tank itself is about 10 feet tall. So we do 50 plus 10, which is 60, added to our original 70 from the static water level and drawdown, and we're looking at about 130 feet of total head. That's what's going on in a solar pump specialist's brain, right, when we're talking about this. Then
and the cool part is that all that math, again, is handled by the specialist.
Yeah, so you don't have to do
you don't even have to be thinking about any of this crazy math, because we're going to handle all of that for you as we walk you through this process.
Yeah. So then, and that's why, a pressure tank, a 45-pound pressure tank is like pumping up a 120-foot hill, essentially. So you really have to take a little bit larger size of a solar pump if we are going to be operating through a pressure tank. But This can be an in-depth process. Frictional loss is going to be added. Really, if you have, we can pump thousands of feet of horizontal distance. We're talking miles long pipeline. As long as you have the right size water pipe for your flow, right? Higher the flow, the bigger the pipe, the longer the distance, the bigger the pipe. That's what you're going to have to be balancing, and we'll figure that out for you as well. There's frictional loss calculators out there, but we're your built-in frictional loss calculator. That's what you're paying for.
Yeah, and these guys are doing hundreds of these every single week, so they've got it down to this really cool exact science. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. So there we go. And when we talk about how much water you should be how much water you should be producing per day for your herd, if you want to go to the slide, then it's not going to go on. That's fine. So I'll just explain it to you, and maybe the slide will pop up later. I usually estimate 20 gallons per day per head of cattle, right? So if you have 50 head of cattle, that's about 1,000 gallons per day. That's what you want to estimate. We're pretty conservative, I would say, with our numbers, meaning that we try and give you a little bit of breathing room past what is minimum needed. And for a pump like an RPS 200 that only produces maybe 3 to 5 gallons per minute, let's say a 5 gallon per minute pump, you pump for 60 minutes. And then you multiply that by 6 hours, you get 1,800 gallons per day. I mean, you're already up and above. If the cows are super thirsty, if you had to add a couple of head to your herd in the next couple of years, you're set, right? And horses and goats and sheep, they all differ a little bit in the numbers that you should be using. Yeah. So goats and sheep are like 3 gallons per day. You don't have to worry about too much. For Chickens are, less than that. Okay.
So unfortunately, we are having we got it back. There we go.
Cool. So these are just some pump curves that we can look at. You can see the total difference between this RPS 200 that we've been talking about a lot at the bottom left-hand side. It's only got about 125 feet of total headability, 5 gallons per minute, as compared to something like the Pro D series, which is our Pro pumps. On that left-hand side of the screen is the total head, or left-hand side of the graph is the total head, 1,100 feet. That's a deep well. That's a lot of headability. And then it's pumping someplace. You can get, 10, 15 gallons per minute, somewhere in that range from them. But you're always giving up something, right? More head, a little less volume. More volume, a little less head. That's what you're seeing with that Pro V series down in purple at the bottom right. It's only maybe got max like 175 feet of head available to all the pumps in the model lineup, but it's doing 25 to 110, 225 gallons per minute.
Yeah, great pump.
Yeah. So then let's talk about Texas. We came here to talk about Texas and some special things in Texas that we've seen. I guess I wouldn't call sandy or sedimentary wells super special.
Yeah, I know,
they
of
tend
course
to challenge people. And sandy and sedimentary wells across the desert areas, California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, you're just going to run into them. What you're essentially doing is dealing with aquifer issues. You're dealing with land issues, just, stuff that gets into the well. You're going to have to pump that out, and that can wear down on some parts sometimes. You may have to filter out that water. There's different ways to do it, right? Get a centrifugal pump, use that in the sandy or sedimentary well if we were really worried. We talked about hail a little bit already. And then, of course, the drought and the need for deeper wells will just oversize you a bit. And by oversize, probably accurately size for what's coming in the future years, and making sure that wherever you're living, you're not going to have to hire, somebody else to come out and pull the pump again, because you're down 700 feet. And we didn't have a pump that could operate to like the 800 foot limit. So, yeah. This is just a quick overview of aquifers in Texas. You've got the major aquifers. This is how you're going to want to maybe start sizing your pump and getting an idea of how deep those aquifers go with the typical well depths of someone. This is a quick video that we can watch of our resources to help find a well log, right? If you don't know how deep your well is, you don't know where your static water level is, you just bought a property, you're like, I have this well, but I can't look down it. The ropes that I send down are not quite giving me accurate readings. So we have compiled a array of databases across the states of places that you could go to find a well log, right? So you'll go to, and we'll drop this information down into an email as we follow up with the webinar. It's hosted by the Texas Water Development Board. They have all of the well logs that are submitted by well drillers. It started in 2001. So the ones before 2001 may not be logged here, but you can compare to what your neighbors, what you see via your neighbors. So we'll scroll down to the map, which is going to show us the entirety of Texas, right? Cool. So you'll scroll down there, you'll search by map. We see all those red dots. Those are all wells that have been submitted that have information. We're going to scroll in a little bit. It takes just a second to load. This is a really helpful tool. I think this is the best thing that anyone has ever compiled, and not all states have it. So luckily Texas does. Give it 1 second. There we go. Okay, so all those red dots, wells. Here we are in the Ogallala Aquifer in northeast Texas. We're going to turn on the major aquifers. Cool, so we can see that. And then we're also going to turn on, there's that Gulf Coast Aquifer down at the bottom right. We're going to turn on the Texas counties layer. Awesome. Now you can identify which county you're in. We're going to use one of these up in the Ogallala. I can't remember which one I used for the example. But as we get closer and closer, you can see how concentrated some of these wells are, right? You'll click on the select and buffer tool and grab one of these squares or circles. The counties are in squares. So let's see what the typical county has in terms of well offerings. Okay, great. So we're going to select Lamb County. And then what's going to pop up in the bottom are all of the well log reports. So you'll see that what they're using it for. It says irrigation, but it could be anything, honestly.
So a question came in just to clarify.
Oh, sure.
What would someone use a well log report for?
Oh, you got to use it for sizing the pump, right? So we need that information. If you come in and you say, hey, RPS, I want to pump out of this well, but I don't know anything about it. And we'll say, well, we'd love to help you, but we need to know at least well depth. At the very least, we need to know well depth. And that's what this well log is going to tell you, right? The well driller initially tested the well. They know how deep they drilled. It'll tell you this borehole depth. So we're looking at 300, 280. There are just different areas of the county are going to have different depths. So compare with your neighbor, compare with the region, compare with your typical elevation, and you'll get your borehole well depth. And it's someplace at least to start.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's such a powerful resource that is so useful.
Yeah. Cool.
Quick question. Is this something that a pump specialist can get for somebody, or is this something that we need them to do beforehand?
Well, yeah, we'd like you to do it yourself. The best way for you to figure out where you're located is just to use your address and come back to us with it.
Totally.
We can do a lot for you, but we just need to do some basic research before you come to us, and we can take care of most of the rest of it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, Texas windmills is one of the last things that we'll talk about, which is how do I maybe reuse my windmill? This person on the left reused their windmill structure to mount their 2 solar panels. They just did a little bit of welding, and now they made their own mount there. And then maybe using a windmill in Texas to supplement the solar pump flow. So you can see the solar pump is flowing a little bit more, I would say, than the windmill is to fill up this pond. Some people want to keep their windmill in place, but it's just not really running all the time. And they buy a solar pump because it runs all 6 to 8, however many hours of sunlight you get during the day. Before, I would say, somebody came in and say, hey, can I attach a solar pump to the bottom of my piston pump that's running my windmill? Well, there's a foot valve on the bottom of that piston, which is the thing that sucks up the water. it's going to be a no before, and now we're working on something that can adapt so that you can run either solar or wind off of the same 2-inch, windmill well that you weren't able to do before. There's the foot valve you see on the right. It's sort of this foot valve that'll pull up into the piston area, and then once the wind isn't running, the solar pump can operate. So that's potentially coming in the next year or so for
absolutely.
RPS.
Really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
No one has seen this yet, so you guys are the very first.
And then otherwise, we have our 2-inch RPS 400N, which can slide down into a 2-inch windmill well. These are what the guys are using across the country, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. And it's very similar, 3 to 5 gallons per minute, and then closer to 225 feet of total head ability. So you have a lot of room to work with.
Now, on average, what would you say is our most common pump amongst Texas livestock ranchers?
RPS 400.
Yeah. RPS 400.
RPS 400, which is the helical rotor pump, or the 400B or 800B, which is the slightly higher volume centrifugal pump with 4 or 8 panels. So they're both using either, every time we say 400, we're using 400 watts, which is 4 panels. Anytime we say 800, we're using 800 watts, 8 panels. But those are 3-inch pumps. And those are our DC pumps, right? Those are our DC and DC systems. And people like that. They're smaller, they're quick to install. Totally. I mean, that's all they need.
Yeah, really, really exciting.
Cool.
All right, so let's talk. Are we going to go over NRCS a little bit or no?
Yeah, we'll quickly cover it. The last secret of our presentation is the fact that there are funding opportunities that exist for farmers, ranchers, livestock producers out in Texas that will reimburse you for your solar pump purchase. It's through NRCS, it's through EQIP, it's these ag-related government programs. You apply for them through your local farm bureau.
And I think one of the really exciting things for me about the NRCS funding and solar water pumping in general is that if you're using, let's say you're using a gas powered generator right now to get water to your cattle, or you're using, you're thinking about adding in an AC line that'll get your water to your cattle. Both of those are way more expensive than solar. And then that is just heightened, by so much when you consider that NRCS can get you the pump for almost no cost.
We're talking about like the cost to drive to the office. And potentially some people front the cost so they can get a little faster, and then they just apply for reimbursement through NRCS and sort of cross their fingers and say, like, I hope I get this money in a timely period.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're sitting there and you've got this huge headache of like, oh my gosh, the gas prices have gone up again. How am I going to fill this generator and still make a profit off of my cattle? You will never have to feel that feeling again, which is really exciting, especially with the NRCS funding that comes in. Really, really great stuff.
We've made systems, right? So the 200, the 400, all those pumps that I was referencing earlier, those are approved by NRCS, right? We've got each individual county in the United States has their own NRCS regulations, which is incredibly confusing and a little insane, because it's like some people want a torque arrestor, even though we don't need torque arresters. So some counties want a torque arrestor. Some counties need different engineering specs. But we've done all of this, right? We've gone through the testing for our solar panels. We have laboratory testing results that we can send them. We have gone through the same thing for our pumps. We have engineering documents for our mounting equipment. We put it all together into an NRCS documentation that we can send to the engineer that's working with your case. And then you guys fill it out together, you send it back to us, and everybody has it on file. You can either purchase what's called an NRCS ready solar pump kit, which comes with the engineering stamps. It comes with a couple extra pieces that adhere to the most stringent NRCS guidelines that we've come across within any of those states that are listed down among our project partners. Alternatively, you may not have to purchase the NRCS kit, which is a little bit more expensive. But if you do, then you're good to go, right? You have no worries. You can just purchase it and then apply for the funding post hoc afterwards.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. Our team has spent hours and hours and hours compiling these documents and doing this research so that you guys don't have to. This is another headache that is completely removed from the equation when you go with RPS. And I think that is just such a valuable thing.
Yeah, and we'll have, like, I've been on the phone with multiple NRCS officers. We'll say, if you give us their number, give them our number, we'll have personal conversation with them over the phone. We'll clarify any questions they have, send over any other documentation or spec sheets that they need, and it takes the pressure off of you to have a one-on-one technical conversation with someone. That's just what we're here for.
Yeah, I love that. We'll do it all for you. There's no questions asked. You don't even have to worry about picking up the phone.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the really, really beautiful things.
This is one of the more complicated processes to go through. So if you have questions about this, let us know. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, what do you say we get into some questions that have come up?
Let's do that.
Okay, give us a second. We're going to look through some of these questions.
Okay. My plan is to pump water from a fenced spring-fed pond, cool, up 30 feet of head to 2 water troughs set under a fence so that cattle can drink from both sides of the fence. Great. So 30 feet of head.
Awesome.
My question is, can I place the pump vertically or horizontal? The answer to that question is A, up to you. The pumps can be placed any way that you want.
Yeah.
Horizontally in the water, you could float them.
As long as the intake is, of course, under the water.
Under the water, yes.
Yeah.
You want the pump under the water, that it also increases cooling of the motor, keeps your pump safe. So vertical or horizontal, up to you. And then how deep below the surface, as long as it's submerged in water. I have people who have like this little itty bitty amount of water above the pump and it works for them perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You just need to use, if you're a little concerned about water intake or water flow there, use the low water sensor so it shuts off the pump before it runs dry. That's my only suggestion. Otherwise, you're good to go. What to use for a float to hold the pump at constant depth? I'd say either a PVC pipe that you glue together 2 ends of, and then you drill a bunch of holes around it to let in water, wrap it with some fine mesh, and then you're good to go in terms of a little bit of a filtration system. Also, if that pond water is a bit dirty, I don't know, spring-fed pond to me sounds like it might have some organic matter that you want to keep out of the intake.
And we even have a video on the YouTube about how to create sort of a filter that spreads over the entirety of the pump so that organic matter is not even an issue.
Yeah, it's an option. We also have a float that we sell for like under $100, $75. That is a vertical float for a pond. It's for fountains or aeration or just floating the pump in the pond so you can get the water out of the pond. I recommend that. I mean, it's like a black round float, and it takes the maker's head of it out of. You don't have to like make it or pick up the PVC from your local hardware store if you just want it shipped to you.
Okay, so Vincent, I hope that answered your question. If you have any follow-up questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat. We have one from Saba, which I feel like we did touch on a little bit, but I just want to reiterate.
Sure.
Saba asks, do solar pumps have automatic shutoffs when a trough is filled?
Yes, so you can use either a wireless tank full sensor, which is going to use a float switch. There's called float switches, mechanical float valves, and then just a tank full sensor. They're all versions of the same thing, which basically the mechanical float and the tank full or the mechanical float and the float switch will float up and down. And there's something in the mechanism that says water is low as it floats down, or water is full as it floats up. Or you can use the tank full sensor on any of the 3-inch pumps that just uses conductivity. Yeah.
We got a really cool comment, not necessarily a question, but my nephew and neighbor both bought the RPS 800 and are very happy with their solar water well pumps and the service that they have provided. That's cool. We love hearing those stories. If you or somebody you know has a pump, let us know. That we love hearing that.
And Bob, I got your question. What's the URL or website for the Texas water well data? We'll follow up with every single one of you totally. With that URL, because it is very, very useful. Yeah, and so we'll get it to you.
Absolutely. Another question, again, we did touch on this, but just to re-hit this point, are solar powered pumps acceptable to NRCS in Texas?
Yes.
Absolutely, they are. Yeah. And again, we will handle that entire process for you. We've got it all worked out, and it's something that we do on a regular basis. So that's pretty exciting. Anybody else have any questions coming in? We do have a couple from the emails. Val, what is the life expectancy of solar panels?
25 years. 25 years before they start losing efficiency. After 25 years, you can still use the solar panels, but they'll be operating at a slightly decreased efficiency. Maybe at that time you add an extra solar panel just to boost it, or you're cool, right? It has a little decreased flow. You're fine with it. It's not a big deal. 25 years is also, a quarter of a human life. So
yeah, totally. Absolutely.
It's a long time for you to have to, before you have to make a decision about it.
Okay. So we're actually going to wrap up with this question here from Matt Martinez. And then guys, don't worry. We've got tons of questions coming in. We just want to be respectful of your time. So we're going to follow up with everybody who attended via email. One last time, you guys all got a message with the sizing form that you need to get the process started. And we're giving everybody $50 off a system if they purchase it and use the code TOWNHALL50, one word, TOWNHALL50. The question coming in from Matt is, my existing system has 2 panels. Will I need an additional panel or battery system for after hours pumping?
Okay. This is a bit of a complicated question, and it has multi-part that I can answer. 2-panel system, which is typically an RPS 200. It's a 24-volt system. If you want extra solar pumping during the early morning and later afternoon, you would want to add 2 more panels, because we want to maintain the 24 volt in our series, in our connections of the panels. So we would add 2 more panels in parallel. That would double your current, which is going to allow you to pump more, or I would say more, which is going to allow you to pump earlier in the daytime, later on the afternoon. It's the same thing that Doug from Colorado was using. He likes using the RPS 800 because that has 2 lines of 4 panels, and that extra current really boosts his pumping out. Now, batteries are not going to necessarily give you 24/7 pumping unless you have a lot of batteries and a lot of panels to maintain that pumping all the way through the day, which can be sort of expensive, to be honest, and a little bit more maintenance than I would recommend. So what's the daily water need for white-tailed deer? I don't know. White-tailed deer is probably like 20 gallons, a little bit less. I mean, they're smaller than a cow, so I would say like 10 to 15 gallons, maybe max 20. But to get back to the battery point, if you're using a 24-volt system, you need 24 volts of battery, so 2 12-volt batteries in series. But those 2 12-volt batteries are only going to get you maybe 4 to 6 hours of pumping, right? So you're shifting it either, if you want to pump 6 hours in the middle of the night, you can do that, but then the system will shut off. Yeah. Or you could pump 6 hours during the day, and you might get a little extra solar boost from the solar panels charging back up the batteries while that energy is being dispersed to pump water. But to be honest, I would just say add some more panels, extend your pumping day, and get a storage tank.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the bottom line.
The storage tank is so useful. But Bob, I've found the exact answer for you, my friend. A white-tailed deer needs about 2 to 3 quarts of water per day per 100 pounds of body mass. In hotter climates, it should be a little bit more. So yeah, pretty exciting. There we go.
Wait till your answer.
Last call for questions. I'll give you about 10 seconds to submit any more questions you guys have. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, this has been a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for being here. We are so blessed to have each and every one of you guys who have come in. We will be following up with everybody right after this. You'll get an email from me. And again, guys, thank you so much for coming in here. If we didn't get to your questions, we will respond in the email. You guys, my co-host Val, thank you so much for your incredible wealth of knowledge. I sent the sizing form again to everybody inside of the chat, as well as your $50 free. And we just want to give that to you again as a thank you for coming on. We value you guys. You guys are absolutely incredible. Thank you again. And until next time, I think I'm going to push for this to be a pretty regular thing.
I think it'll be a regular thing. We'll have guests. And we'll try and replicate the success. I think of the
absolutely,
first one.
absolutely.
For hanging in. It's running a little long, but that's the key. We
love you guys. Thank you so much. This has been the Secrets of Solar Stock Watering Texas edition.
Bye.